I didn't pick a fight with my classmates. I picked the library seat by the window, the late lab hours nobody wanted, the quiet kind of competence that makes you useful and forgettable at the same time. The fight came anyway, wearing group project smiles and the kind of handshake that measures how much it can take from you before you notice your pockets are light. Senior year, data systems capstone, teams of 4, sponsors with logos that could change the next 5 years of your life if you impressed them. The assignment was simple in the way scaffolding looks simple when you drive past a building. Design, build, and defend a working prototype that ingested public sensor data, cleaned it, predicted anomalies, and explained the prediction to someone who didn't speak math. The sponsors would watch the final defense and consider opportunities. Everyone heard internships that turn into offers if you don't trip on your own tongue. I was assigned to Team 7 with Ethan, Maya, and Lucas. If you'd asked me on day 1 to draw a triangle of power, Ethan would have been the top corner with his hair that looked like he shook it on purpose and a laugh that made whatever he'd just said sound smarter. Maya would have been the right corner, calm, red pen, always ready. The person who volunteers to take notes and then writes the minutes that become law. Lucas was the left corner, the one that slumped. He was funny in the way that buys you time and late in the way that spends other people's. We met in the lab, the one with whiteboards that never quite erased, and windows that showed you a parking lot and the back of the sponsor banner stapled to a fence. Ethan took the whiteboard marker like a scepter. "We should do a streaming pipeline, not batch," he said. "Real-time WOW sponsors." He drew boxes and arrows that grazed nouns and skipped verbs. Maya nodded and mm'd in a way that said she'd make a spreadsheet to match whatever he said. Lucas spun a chair and said, "I can do front end," like a man volunteering to hold the ribbon while other people do the cutting. "What about data quality?" I asked. "These sensors drop half the time. We'll need robust imputation or the model will hallucinate." Ethan smiled the way polite people smile when a waiter describes a dish they've already decided not to order. "You're our back-end wizard," he said. "Own that. I'll run point with the sponsor. Meet weekly. Manage expectations." There's a version of me that would have let that be flattery. I gave it the shape of a boundary instead. "I'll build the pipeline and the model, but version control is non-negotiable. Git, not Ethan's laptop. Ticketing, not vibes." "Of course," he said, like I'd asked for napkins with dinner. "We're not animals." We set up the repo on a private server I paid for 3 years ago when our class group account kept timing out. Old habit. Don't let other people's lack of planning sink your work. I created users, permissions, branches. I dropped a README that spelled out rules like guardrails. Commit messages meaningful, code reviews before merges, data locked with checksums, and documented transformations. I pushed a skeleton project. Maya added a set of tasks to Trello. Lucas posted a GIF. Ethan scheduled the sponsor call and sent a calendar invite that said he was the team lead. The first 2 weeks were work, not weather. I wrote ingestion for the streaming API, built fallbacks for when the municipal server took its Tuesday nap, boxed errors with logs that meant something. Maya built a pre-processing pipeline that handled missingness with a mixture of interpolation and short window medians. Lucas put a dashboard together that could render a line chart without crying. Ethan held meetings where he promised demos we hadn't committed to yet, and negotiated a deliverable timeline as if enthusiasm were a resource you could inflate with breath alone. What I didn't see yet, the redistribution. It started small enough to walk past without noticing. My code would be merged with my comments removed and Ethan's name tagged as co-author. Maya's notes to client would describe decisions with "we agreed" when the "we" had been her and me at 1 a.m. while Ethan slept and Lucas sent TikToks. Pull requests piled up with LGTM from Ethan without review. The sponsor started emailing him directly, and he stopped forwarding the threads. 2 Fridays in a row. I stayed past midnight to bring the model accuracy up from lucky guess to reasoned prediction, writing feature engineering that stripped out the noise those sensors were designed to produce. On Monday morning, Ethan stood at the whiteboard, circles under his eyes, that red like theater makeup, and said to the sponsor, "We pushed a big improvement." He didn't say "we" like a team word. He said it like a possessive. You can hate this kind of thing abstractly, or you can keep a ledger. I'm a ledger man. I added a column to our tickets called Authored By, and a second called Co-Authors. I wrote in plain text who wrote what and when, with links to commits and lines. I backed up the repo nightly to storage in another region under a different account. I didn't announce it. I don't announce smoke detectors either. The first time they cut me out wasn't a miscommunication. The sponsor asked for an explainability layer. No black box predictions without why. That's work that matters. Work that requires your brain to shake hands with your ethics. I'd blocked off Saturday to prototype SHAP explanations and write a wrapper to translate them into sentences someone's grandmother could follow. Friday afternoon, Ethan scheduled a quick sync with the sponsor for Saturday morning. He didn't invite me. Maya sent a "Can we move to afternoon?" reply I never saw until later, because it lived on Ethan's private thread. Lucas posted a selfie from a bar. Saturday morning, I pulled logs by habit and watched someone clone the repo from an IP I didn't recognize. Ethan had given the sponsor access to collaborate, a first-time violation that contained a dozen others, code leaving our control, the supplier of our data seeing internals that would be evaluated later, the collapsing of boundaries for applause. I called him. He didn't pick up. He texted, "In call, later." When later arrived, he explained like a man explaining to a child how rain works. They wanted to see progress. I looped them in. They love transparency. Transparency isn't handing them our internal repo, I said. It's scheduled demos, documented decisions. You made us liable for their mistakes. He laughed. Liable? The city? We're students, man. Relax. It's agile. Agile. The word small emperors say to justify chaos as innovation. I refactored the explainability layer anyway and wrote the doc Maya would have written if she hadn't started editing her own language down to be easier to steal. At the bottom, I added a line. Authored by me, reviewed by Maya. Ethan merged the code and removed the line. 2 days later, at a sponsor meeting, he said, "We decided to adopt a hybrid approach to explanations." And the sponsor's project manager nodded at him like dogs nod when the person who keeps the treats says, "Good." If you're waiting for the turn where I could have left, it didn't exist. This project was 60% of our grade. Ethan had already made himself the point of contact with the sponsor and the professor. Dropping the team would have meant failing or starting over without a sponsor 3 months before graduation. Besides, it wasn't about leaving. It was about making sure gravity got its chance. So I built the trap. Not the kind you write for TV, where someone gets locked in a server room or a webcam captures a confession. A good trap is a mirror, built with their hands. Mine started with data. We had to build a synthetic dataset to test our model offline before we let it touch the fire hose. That's standard. I seeded 3 variations of this dataset, each identical, except for a single unique constant hidden in a transform so innocuous that only someone copying the file and claiming it as theirs would inherit it. A slight skew in a dummy sensor's baseline for one, a timestamp offset of 1 minute applied and then reversed for another, a harmless change in an ID collation rule for the third. I named them all Synthetic v3.csv because thieves love v3s. I added the checksums to a file in the repo. I put the original in a directory called /gold and the 3 salted copies in their sync. I gave Ethan read access to a sync, but not gold. I gave Maya and Lucas the same. I kept gold permission to me alone. Then code. I wrote a pre-commit hook that added a hidden comment to every file, merged from a branch that had interacted with sync. The comment was harmless, a marker in a JSON block that no linter would flag, but that I could search for later. I also wrote a tiny function, 2 lines, that called a ping endpoint on my personal server whenever the code path with the salted transform executed. It sent a hash and a timestamp. Nobody reads every line of code they import when they trust the source. They trusted me enough to steal from me. Finally, narrative. Good traps don't spring without a story to explain the sound when they do. I started writing weekly state-of-the-build emails to the professor and the sponsor, copying the team in the driest possible style. What we did, what we planned, who was assigned. I put in the names, I linked the commits, I put in dates, I filed them in a folder I called Minute Book, because I knew how committees love minutes when the air gets smoky. Maya noticed first. "You're getting formal," she messaged me. "I'm getting precise," I wrote back. Lucas chimed in with a clown emoji. Ethan wrote nothing. 2 weeks out from final defense, Ethan announced a surprise demo for the sponsor, late Wednesday, outside class hours. He framed it as building momentum, the way a man frames pushing a car downhill as letting gravity show off. It collided with my job shift at the campus help desk. I asked to reschedule. He wrote, "Can't, only time that works for them." Maya reacted with a thumbs-up emoji, a tiny betrayal I refused to read as collaboration. I pulled logs for my little ping function out of habit and saw a spike at 7:03 p.m. that Wednesday from a network that didn't belong to campus. Someone had executed the salted transform on synthetic 53.csv. The hash matched one of the salted versions. I took a breath. Then I pulled commits and saw a file added from Ethan's branch to main with a message that just said hotfix. Lucas reacted with, "The hotfix was my code, minus the header documenting authorship." Thursday morning, Ethan sent a Slack. "Great news. Sponsor loved the demo. Said we're top of the heap. I pitched us presenting at City Hall after graduation. They're in." I wrote, "We need to be careful about what we promise." He replied, "Relax. This is how you get jobs." I stared at the sentence for longer than a healthy man would, and then added it to the minute book. Maya pulled me aside after class. "He shouldn't have scheduled without you," she said low. "You built that." "You also built this," I said. "You just stopped putting your name on it." She winced. "He keeps saying we're a unit." "And he's the unit leader," I said. "Convenient." She looked like a person who has packed a suitcase she doesn't plan to carry. "Finals in 2 weeks." "I know," I said. "It'll be memorable." "Don't blow us up," she said. "Please." I didn't want to blow anything up. I wanted to let a structure go where it was already leaning. The week before finals, the sponsor posted a student spotlight on their blog with headshots and quotes. Ethan's quote was a paragraph about leadership and vision. Maya's was about discipline. Lucas's was a line about UI to make data friendly. Mine said enjoys problem solving. The photo they used for me was a crop from a group picture, my shoulder mid-shrug. I sent the link to the professor with a note. "This misrepresents contributions. See attached commit summary." He wrote back, "We'll evaluate on the final. Keep it professional." Professors love professional, the way doctors love rest. I kept it professional. I assembled a dossier, commit logs per person, the minute book, the salted dataset documentation with checksums, the ping logs timestamped to the surprise demo. I included screenshots of Slack messages where Ethan unilaterally made decisions. I included the sponsor blog and the emails I'd sent asking for credit. I wrote an executive summary with the tone of a compliance officer who knows exactly how many regulations you've leaned on while pretending not to. Final day. Defenses ran in a lecture hall, repurposed into a courtroom for hopeful nerds. Sponsors in the back. Professor in front, with a rubric that might as well have been gavel-shaped. Teams wore their best shirts and their most confident shoes. Team 7 went third. Ethan walked on stage like he owned it. He opened with a joke about herding cats. Maya advanced slides with the steadiness of a professional presenter. Lucas showed the dashboard. I took the mic to talk about the model, laid out the architecture in sentences that did not perform. Then the Q&A. A sponsor asked about handling missing data. I answered with words that didn't leak condescension. Another asked about explainability. I plugged the layer I'd built. We use SHAP and present in plain language explanations, e.g., Sensor 12's baseline drift by X% contributed Y% to the anomaly flag. The professor asked about reproducibility and version control. Ethan launched into a story about radical transparency and looping the client into our source so they felt ownership. The professor's eyebrows went for a walk. Then I took out the mirror. Before we conclude, I said, I want to acknowledge a best practice we adopted early. We created a gold synthetic dataset and 3 working variants to test for robustness across transforms. Each working variant contained a harmless, unique signature that allowed us to verify lineage if code was copied without review. This has been valuable for teaching our team the importance of controlled data. I advanced a slide that showed the 3 checksums and their hashes. The room didn't know what it was looking at yet. The professor did. He leaned forward. In last week's client demo, I said, code executing. The variant labeled B pinged a log server at 7:03 p.m., correlating with an unreviewed commit to main from branch Ethan/demo. This helped us identify a process gap and correct it before today. Silence. Ethan laughed the wrong way. We move fast, he said. Sometimes we do hot fixes. The sponsor's project manager whispered to his colleague. The professor looked at me. Do you have the logs? Yes, I said, holding up a printout like the exhibits lawyers brandish. Time-stamped, and a summary of contributions matched to commits and the minute book emails. Ethan's face went a color you only see on people about to say they're fine when they aren't. Maya looked down at her hands. Lucas rubbed his eyebrow, like it had become a button that could reverse time. The professor cleared his throat. Thank you, he said. Process matters. We can discuss after. We finished. We sat. The next team presented into a room that felt different. After the final team, the professor asked to meet with us and the sponsor in a side room. It smelled like dry erase and old coffee. He closed the door. I want to be very clear, he said. You will each submit a written account of your contributions by tonight. I have the logs. The evaluation will reflect the facts. The sponsor will make decisions based on their own review. Ethan started to speak. The professor raised a hand. Not now. You might think it felt like victory. It felt like a tool hitting a nail. Correct, loud, a little ugly. I sent the dossier that afternoon to the professor and the Academic Integrity Office, not as an accusation, but as documentation. I didn't use the word plagiarism. I used misattribution, process failure, and unapproved code exposure to client, because administrations move faster when failures sound like liability. 3 days later, the grades posted. Individual. I received an A, Maya a B+, Lucas a C, Ethan a D, with a note, integrity review pending. The sponsors sent an email to Team 7 thanking us for the demo and stating they would be moving forward with teams that demonstrated both technical acumen and robust process. Ethan's LinkedIn post about presenting to city leadership as a capstone highlight disappeared. That should have been enough. It wasn't, because gravity takes time and ego hates time. Ethan emailed me the day after grades. You blindsided me. You could have come to me. I wrote back. I came to you for months. The logs are not a surprise. He sent 3 more paragraphs about teamwork and growth. I archived them. Maya texted, I'm sorry. I believed her and also didn't. He told me we were a unit, she wrote. He made me feel crazy for wanting my name on things. You can fix that next time, I wrote. Don't let men like him hold your whole sky. Lucas sent a DM. Bro, you didn't have to nuke us. I didn't reply. He posted an Instagram story the next day of him at a bar with the caption, We ball. And I hoped his future boss liked men who cope by pretending it's always Saturday. The Integrity Office called Ethan. They requested his version of the story, his commits, his emails. He gave them voluminous word clouds. They requested mine. I gave them the minute book and a digestible index, because the person who does the indexing wins the argument in any bureaucracy. 2 weeks later, the decision came. academic misconduct for misrepresentation of contributions, and unauthorized code exposure to an external party. Letter in file. No referral to City Hall. He appealed. He lost. He begged then, the way men like him beg. Indirectly, with all the words except please. He cornered me outside the building and used my name like a rope. "Noah," he said, "we're graduating. Don't let this follow me." He gestured at air as if it were a crowd that might hear me be gracious. "We all made mistakes." "You weaponized my work," I said. I turned the weapon off. He stepped closer. "I need this internship. My dad—" He stopped. That was the first honest sentence he'd offered me. His dad, who was the kind of man who turns his sons into business cards and hands them out at golf. This could mess up my start. "You did that," I said. "I documented it." He searched my face for the man who would hand him a towel after the mess. I let him look. I did nothing. He walked away and ran a hand through his hair like a man removing a crown. Maya asked for coffee. We sat in the campus cafe that smells like milk and deadlines. She confessed more than I asked for. How she deferred to Ethan because he made professors laugh. How she shrank because precision gets called difficult when it arrives in a woman's mouth. How she started changing her verbs to we because I earned her less safety. I didn't absolve her. I told her to stop writing other people's names into her sentences. She nodded like she'd heard it before from someone who loves her. Maybe she had, and ignored it, until a grade made it look like a math problem she could solve. Lucas sent an apology 2 months later with a subject line, "My bad." He asked me to put in a good word with a recruiter at a company where I'd landed a role. I didn't respond. He emailed again with "Noah, bro." I didn't respond. He texted, "Please, man." I did nothing. He sent a screenshot of an eviction warning like it might make me soften, where his earlier laziness hadn't hardened me already. I did nothing. There's a muscle you build when you stop letting other people's emergencies detonate in your lap. I started work in a city where men like Ethan become sales engineers, and women like Maya become the people who actually make things ship. I wrote code and wrote documentation and wrote emails that were boring on purpose. I slept. I started running in the mornings, before the humidity made the air chewable. I didn't post about the capstone. I didn't put "brought down a thief" in the section where my resume's bullet points go. I built. News drifts to you if you hold still. Ethan resurfaced at a different company with a title that suggested he'd found a place where personality counts as deliverables. His LinkedIn tagline said, "Process-driven." I smiled at that. A year later, a former classmate sent me a screenshot of a forum post where someone asked about a bug in an explainability wrapper that looked exactly like my code. The poster's username was a handle I recognized from Ethan's gaming profiles. I didn't reply. Another year, and Maya messaged me a photo of a City Hall event. Her team presented a dashboard to the public. She stood at the podium. Her name was on the slide, her card, her voice. "Thank you," she wrote, "for showing me the cost of disappearing." I wrote back, "You paid it. You keep paying the right things." Lucas bounced. He tagged me in nothing. He added 2 jobs with 3-month spans. He posted stories of beaches I recognized as a pattern. Men who are always on vacation because work is too heavy and leisure is the only thing they lift. You want the part where they beg again. There was a version of it at a career fair I returned to as an alum representing my company. Ethan avoided my table. Maya came over to say hello and didn't apologize again because she had learned that apologies have diminishing returns when asked for beyond their half-life. Lucas joined the line and left when he reached the front and saw me, because cowardice and self-preservation share a fence. The sponsor's project manager, now a director, shook my hand and said, "We tightened our student project protocols after that year." He didn't say my name in the sentence. He didn't need to. I said, "Good," because the correct response to a system that learns something is encouragement, not ownership. If this sounds colder than you wanted, it's because I built the cold on purpose. Heat is for other rooms. Heat is for kitchens where the kettle sings and someone you trust opens the cabinet without asking where the cups live. Heat is for love. The classroom, the lab, the groups where everyone writes "we" and means the person who says I the loudest. Those spaces need chill. They function when there's ice in the lines that keep everyone honest. Sometimes at night, when the city is loud and my code runs without logs yelling at me, I pull up the minute book and scroll. Not to gloat, to remind myself that I didn't burn anything down. I documented. I sent the docs where they needed to go. I stood in a room and put the mirror at the right angle. I didn't manufacture guilt. I manufactured clarity. A younger student asked me once, half whisper, after a talk I gave about data ethics, "What do you do when the team lead steals your work?" He looked like I must have looked, competent, scared, one bad day away from moving home. I didn't tell him to be a hero. I told him to keep receipts, to tell the truth to the people whose job it is to hear it, to build small pings into his life that let him know when his work has been executed without his consent, metaphorical ones, not code, although sometimes code does the metaphor better than we do. To be patient, to make the moment public, not with a scream, but with a printout taped to a whiteboard that says, "Here is what happened, and here are the dates." He said, "Will they hate me?" I said, "Some will. Some will respect you. Many won't care. That's all fine. The point is not to be loved. It's to be aligned with what's true when the grades hit the page." If you're expecting me to say I forgave Ethan, I won't. Forgiveness belongs to a faith I lost around the time men in my neighborhood were praised for borrowing their cousins' trucks and calling it entrepreneurship. I don't have a script for absolution. I have a process for not letting harm replicate. That's enough. Sometimes, on runs, I cut past the old campus. The lecture hall looks the same. The windows reflect a sky that pretends it never changes color. New banners hang with different sponsor logos, same smiles. I imagine a team sitting where I sat, one of them watching the people who say "we" and "I" like coins. I hope he or she has a file on a drive called Minute Book. I hope their salted dataset catches exactly the kind of sloppiness that had it coming. I hope they stand at the front of the room and are boring in the way integrity is boring until the moment it explodes into relevance. There's a sentence I keep on a sticky note by my desk. Let gravity do what it does. It reminds me not to push when my hands want to prove I'm strong. It reminds me that the best revenge is structural. It reminds me that doing nothing at the right time, when they beg, when they flatter, when they tell you to relax, because it's just how things are done, is harder than action and more effective. When Ethan begged, I did nothing. When Maya apologized, I accepted and did nothing else. When Lucas asked for a pass, I did nothing. The trap wasn't a cage. It was a line on the ground I refused to step back over. I never wanted to be the person who keeps minute books on friends. I wanted the seat by the window, the late lab hours, the quiet. I still want those things. But the world hires men like Ethan to hold the markers unless someone rearranges the room. I moved a few desks. I set up a camera that records only when you stand in front of it and say, "This is mine," and then try to erase the tape. I left when the work was done. I went home. I boiled water. I waited for the kettle to sing.